I'm Nora Roche, and welcome to People in Perspective. Today we're joined by Douglas Greene, a local musician and guitar teacher. Thanks for joining us, Douglas.
Thank you for having me.
So, how long have you been playing music? I know it's been maybe over 40...
For almost my entire life. I won't tell you exactly how old I am, but I started playing guitar probably around age 10.
So guitar was your first instrument?
Yes. Yeah, it was my first serious instrument.
So why did you start playing music?
The first thing that inspired me to play music was I happened to be just old enough to remember the Beatles' first appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I was a wee young lad at the time, but I remembered it well. And it was a Sunday evening show, and I watched it and I was just so inspired. The Beatles were so fun, they were young, it was a new sound. And I remember the next day going to school, walking to the bus stop with a friend of mine, and we were like singing, yeah, 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 I want to hold your hand, yeah, 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 which wasn't how the song went, but you know, we were inspired. And so that was really got me interested in maybe someday playing music.
So you could say the Beatles were your first inspiration.
Yeah, yeah. Now, at the time, we didn't have guitars, so but we did have tennis rackets, and they were shaped like guitars, and we could pretend that we were playing songs. And so for a while, my friends and I just put on records, and we pretended that we were playing along with the songs. But a year or so later, I was outside playing with my friends, and off in the distance, we heard a band playing live in a garage, a true garage band, you know, and they sounded just like the Beatles and the other bands that they were imitating. And we got on our bikes and we rode over there to see what was going on, and sure enough, that was some teenagers. They had like real instruments, playing real songs, and one of the songs that I remember hearing, the first thing was, oh my God, that sounds exactly like a Beatles song. And it didn't occur to me that you could actually play songs exactly like the band that you were listening to. And so by that time, my older brothers had guitars, and I just started using their guitars when they weren't home to try to figure out these songs. And that's what really got me started with playing music, because it was a magical thing to be able to actually play something that sounds like a real song.
So you played music starting at about 10 years old.
Yeah.
All through your entire life, but all through including middle school, high school, college. How would you say your musical sense developed during that time? Did your tastes in music change at all?
A lot. And you know, if there was any criticism that anybody might have had with me, is that I wasn't focused on one genre of music. I liked the rock songs like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Dave Clark Five and the bands at the time, but I also listened to my father's old jazz records, and I loved listening to those, and some country songs that he had on records as well. So I was influenced by a lot of different things, and I never really thought of music as being like different. They were just different genres of the same thing. And so they all interested me.
I believe that great musicians don't limit themselves to enjoying just one genre.
I would hope so. Yeah.
So you played music in college as well. I believe that's when you started performing in front of people.
Yeah, between high school and college, I started getting gigs, and some of them were solo jobs, like playing at a wedding. Some of them were with a band, like playing at wedding receptions or parties, and high school dances. And so, we formed a band, several bands, and we were very, very busy doing different kinds of music. And then when I went to college, which is a couple years after graduating from high school, they gave me an opportunity to actually study music and play in like more classical type settings, which was really helpful. I think learning about music through the classical musicians like Bach
Certainly.
really is like the foundation of music, and it helped me understand music much better through those bands and through studying at school.
Mm-hmm. And you've been performing pretty much since high school onward.
Yeah.
Would you say that you enjoy performing solo more or performing with a band?
I like them both. I think it's much more difficult to perform solo because you have no one to fall back on. And playing in a band, you can allow other musicians, of course, to do a lot as well, and you just take your turn. And so I think because I am social, I do enjoy playing with a group of people more than alone. But at least alone, I got an opportunity to play different kinds of music that I couldn't normally play with a band. Some songs are just solo songs. And so my sense of social connection there was with the audience rather than with my bandmates.
When did you begin starting musical lessons? Because you teach not only kids, but adults and teenagers music.
Yes, my oldest students are in their 70s. My youngest students would be around age 10. When I decided to no longer work in a more corporate environment, I decided I would just strike out and become a performing musician. And at the same time, I started taking lessons. And giving lessons and performing kind of goes hand in glove in the sense that people might see you performing and go, hey, do you offer lessons? And I'm like, yeah, and I give my card. And the other way around, people who take lessons would be like, do you gig? And I'm like, sure, and they would come and hear me at the gigs. So the two worked well, and the nice thing about lessons, it was a more steady income, whereas gigging is just totally unreliable when it comes to actually earning money. You just have no idea what you're going to get from week to week. So the lessons provided a little bit of stability with income.
So what would you say now inspires you to keep playing music? Is it your own progress that you've made, or is it other musicians?
Inspiration comes at you out of the blue. At least for me. I can't look for inspiration, right? It just is going to hit you. And so I find it coming from surprising ways. Like, for example, if you're watching a YouTube video of some musician you like, YouTube has figured out an algorithm that suggests possible other musicians you might like, and so you like jump over to those. And sometimes you find somebody that you've never heard of, and it's like, oh my God, this is a great song, this is a great musician. And then that can be inspirational. But I think the biggest inspiration for me is that I'm very competitive with myself. I'm not competitive with other people, but I'm competitive with myself. And I have a backlog of things I want to learn. And the reality is that if I can just scratch the surface of everything I want to learn, I will be happy, because you should see my binders of, I want to learn this and I want to learn that. I got these songs lined up here. I do like to compose and write songs, and so that's a little more work. I love to do that. Now with COVID and not being able to perform at venues like I used to, now I want to record videos of myself performing songs, and I've been doing a little bit of that and putting those songs up on YouTube. So there's a lot of inspiration and motivation that just comes from wanting to do everything and not having enough time.
Now, I wanted to ask you about your first song, because I know as an artist, looking back on my old work is both inspiring, embarrassing, and it can be very enlightening, to see what progress you've made, in what direction you've gone. So what was the first song that you composed, completely original?
I don't even remember,
No?
because I was young, and they were pretty awful sometimes. They were pretty awful songs. There were a few songs from my first phase of songwriting, which was when I was a teenager, a young adult. And there's a few that still stand the test of time. I think they're okay songs, though I don't normally perform them. And then my second phase of songwriting came when I started gigging almost full time, and that was maybe 10 years later or more. And those songs are much better. I was older. I understood music better. I understood how to get around the form and structure of a song and be able to make something that seems to be pretty solid. And I still like some of those songs. My friends like those songs. Sometimes I get requests when we do play out at the venues for some of those songs, which is very flattering. Yeah, and I still like to continue writing songs, but like I said, there's so much I want to do.
So you mentioned performing.
Mm-hmm.
As a musician, what would be your ideal venue space? And I guess what would be your ideal audience?
If I won the lotto,
Mm-hmm.
I would pay 1 million people, 1,000 people to come to a gig and all listen carefully and clap at the end of every song. That would be ideal. And that doesn't happen very often. I've never won the lottery. So I like all music venues. There's always challenges to music venues. And a lot of them are like the coffee shop type venues. Sometimes you might get a place, a small auditorium where you play, and that's really cool. I like that. But probably my favorite thing to do is these more informal gatherings that I've had for many years. Started out with just showing up at the Oak Park Farmers Market with my guitar and playing along with people. Of course, you're not getting paid for that. You're just sitting in and jamming. It's fun music. The interesting thing is that you don't have sheet music to look at, and so you have to just pay attention and learn the song on the fly. Especially when maybe someone throws you a solo and you've never played the song before. It's like, you better be ready. And that's a challenge, and it's fun, and it's a very social thing. Out of that opportunity that I played a couple decades ago at the Oak Park Farmers Market, I met up with friends, and we said, hey, let's do more than just the music we play there. Let's do jazz and popular music, and let's go to another venue. And so over the last 20, 30 years, I've been playing Saturday mornings at a number of venues with my friends in a very informal way. And some of the notable places that we played Saturday mornings was Borders bookstore in Oak Park, but it closed down 15 years ago or something like that.
Right.
And we played at a little cafe called Eastgate Cafe in Oak Park. And then our latest venue with Saturday mornings was at the Friendly Tap in Berwyn on Roosevelt Road. And we just, a group of 6 musicians, including me, show up. We play for a few hours, and it's just a lot of fun, and there's no pressure because we're not really truly gigging. No one's paying us. We just take turns picking songs, and if we do well with a song, terrific. If we crash and burn, so what? We haven't played that song for 20 years. It's okay.
Right.
Not like we crash and burn a lot, but it's not like we've worked out a set list and we've rehearsed those songs. We're just playing them on the fly, and it's really fun to do that.
So, do you prefer a small crowd or a larger crowd, would you say? Or does it depend on the attitude of the crowd?
It totally depends on how receptive the crowd is. I would love to play to a big crowd if it was, Carnegie Hall. But I'm really quite happy playing to a group of 4 people. Mm-hmm. When the band outnumbers the audience, it can be a little bit awkward, but it's still, if they're a good audience, I love every one of them. It's great.
So, what advice would you give to future musicians? And I mean that as in, like, people who have never picked up an instrument, basically.
I have a lot of advice because I've seen the struggles of students, and I know them personally myself. One thing is that if you're interested in playing a musical instrument, you have to love practicing. And I say that from a point of view where I don't particularly like practicing, you know. I prefer to just sit down and try to figure out songs, which works just as well, I think, as practicing. But you need to set up yourself a little corner where you have your musical instrument available and sheet music out, and make it very welcoming so that even if you only have 5 minutes one day, you're waiting for a ride to go somewhere and you don't know what to do, sit down and play for 5 minutes. I see that if the people that I know who practice a little bit every day, first thing in the morning, the last thing at night, progress a lot better than the people who wait like once a week and try to practice a lot. So a little bit every day, enjoy practicing, have a welcoming place to sit. I also think that, as challenging as it might be, it's good to learn standard music notation. Everybody's resistant to that because tablature for guitar is so much easier to figure out.
Right.
But music notation makes you smart because it gives the notes a name. It gives the chords that you play an understanding for you to know what notes make up those chords. And I also recommend just, if you get a chance to learn something about, say, Bach, for example. I don't want to, say that Bach is like the greatest classical composer, but he laid down the foundation to understand how music fits together, whether you're in one key or you transpose through several keys. It's really the key to understanding how music works, and so a little bit of study in classical music is very helpful.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Doug. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Do you think as we close out you could play a bit of your song?
Sure. Mm-hmm. I'll play a Beatles song.
I'm Nora Roche, and this was People in Perspective.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to rise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, if you were only waiting for this moment to be free.